Okay, I got asked recently what this red box is, and I love this little red box. Even though it's very old and very out of date, I absolutely love this thing. What it is a very old graphing meter, and it does have like an oscilloscope mode, but that mode is so old and slow compared to like a modern oscilloscope that I think it's just safe to say that this is mostly a graphing meter. Although it's very impressive, it really is. But what graphing meters and oscilloscopes do is they take a sample over time, and there's a sample rate. The sample rate is just the number of samples that it can take in a second, and even a regular meter has got a sample rate. But it's relatively slow. It may be 2 or 3 times a second, depending on the mode you're in. And what you're seeing on the screen is always the live view. In this case, the meter is taking a sample, and it plots that every time it takes a sample. It puts a little mark on the screen, so you end up with a graph, and you can see what an electrical circuit is doing over time, and that can be very useful if you have something really goofy going on, some kind of glitch that's happening very fast, some kind of weird intermittent issue. So I'm going to try to demonstrate today how I use this in the field. So right now I have it in an ohm setting, so resistance, which is a big advantage of a graphing meter over an oscilloscope. You can make the oscilloscope read resistance through setting up a type of voltage circuit to feed into it, but this is just looking at voltage. With the graphing meter, you have a lot of the traditional multimeter functions in a graph form. So I have it in resistance right now, and this is the switch off my fireplace that's been acting really goofy. And just FYI, with toggle switches, if it's the auto mode that's acting goofy, then it's these 2 pins that are that need to be looked at, because the center one is the common. When you push this up, or if you've got a lever type toggle switch and you flip that up, what it's doing is taking a slider and moving it down and connecting these 2. Anyways, we're going to take this apart and take a closer look at it. So let's see here. I have this going right now. Let's see if we can look at this issue. Okay, so there's on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. All right, let me hold that. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. There we go. So you can see we had a really dirty, we have a really dirty waveform when it goes to cut off. So instead of it being a nice clean upwards from 0 to basically infinity, I have some weird hash. So instead of cleanly cutting off, it's like it's sort of jumping around. There's a on condition, so from infinity down to 0, which is also pretty dirty. This meter is pretty clunky when it comes to zooming and all that kind of stuff. In fact, I don't even know if you can zoom on the multimeter mode. I usually don't even mess with that. Whereas something like this, just beautiful when it comes to zooming in and analyzing waveforms. There's a super clean on condition and clean off position. So, and this switch was actually pretty intermittent. I lucked out and caught a couple oddballs, but I've been messing with this switch for a while now, and I'll tell you that this is pretty This is pretty rare here. I looked out and caught that. But it was doing this a lot, very clean on and off. And it was just every so often I would catch a really dirty waveform. And there's a lot of really cool, I'll have to get into some of the other things that you can diagnose by looking at how clean the waveform is, like DC motors and stuff like that. But anyways, so now we know there's something going on with the contacts, and we're going to take this switch apart, look at what's inside of it, and look at what the issue might be. All right, so I've taken the switch apart, and these could be a pain in the butt to take apart. What I typically do is get a little skinny screwdriver, get it in here and pry up that way to try to get this little tab out of the hole. And yeah, they look a little rough after you mess with them. You can see that little dent right there, and I could probably be a little more careful, but whatever, I don't care that much. So here's the electrical contacts, and you can see how they have been sliding against those pins. So what happens inside of these switches is that they're full of like dielectric grease to prevent oxidation. You can see some down on that corner, but look at what's happened to this grease. Is it's gotten like, it's not really grease anymore. It's more like it's gotten really almost like flaky and stiff and stuff like that. And my theory of what's going on here is that it's actually preventing contact. It's also degraded to the point where it's not protecting these from oxidation. So what I'm going to do is clean this up, and we're going to put it back together. I'm probably going to put some silicone grease on there as well. We're going to put it back together and then retest it and see what it looks like. I clean these by taking like some needle nose with paper towel, spraying it with isopropyl alcohol, working that around in there. You can see how nice those look. And then with this, I wipe it with the isopropyl alcohol. I try something really non-abrasive first, like paper, just to see if I can clean it up. Sometimes manufacturers will put like coatings on switch surfaces and stuff, so you never know what's there. But this one was so bad that I ended up just taking a little Scotch-Brite pad and touching it up. And so I'll put some silicone grease on this to help protect it in the future. Now what I have done in the field before is, because you could see how like kind of nasty that grease is, WD-40 is actually a great solvent. I honestly use it probably more for cleaning than I do for lubricating stuff, but I have sprayed WD-40 in these and worked them back and forth a bunch and actually cleaned them up internally like that without taking them apart. And I've done that in the field, and it's always worked really well. WD-40 is also non-conductive, so obviously I wouldn't recommend you use it on high voltage, but it's non-conductive, so it doesn't tend to interfere with electrical circuits, or at least that's my experience. I've got the switch back together now, and I don't want to bore you with doing this 1,000 times on camera, but it is working perfectly with 0 glitches. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that on camera now. I'll just do it a bunch here and then pause the waveform. All right. So you can see how clean those on and off cycles are with 0 hash. And that's what we want to see, very clean, makes and breaks. So now we know that we fixed the problem, and the switch should now have 30 more years of service. Oh, it's just a cheap little switch, you know. These are cheap, and maybe I should have just replaced it. But I do like the way it's labeled. I got this off of a salvage fireplace, so I actually looked, and I don't know if I can find one with these labels. I'm really partial to this. Anyways, so that's how you use a graphing meter to diagnose really quick glitches that would be hard to see with a multimeter, and also how you can use it to confirm the health or integrity of an electrical circuit. So anyways, hope that was interesting.